He's here.
I do know what punters want.
He's there.
It's been $2.02 into $1.91.
An interesting fact here at ANZ.
It seems he's everywhere.
And remember, gamble responsibly.
It's bullshit. It is ridiculous on football coverage to pretend to have a conversation, to say, what do you like in the fifth at Randwick?
Now he and the industry he's dragged into the spotlight are under attack.
This promotion and advertising of sport betting has more potential to disable more people in our lifetime than anything else.
The gambling free-for-all of sports betting. Welcome to the program. Tom Waterhouse is bookmaking aristocracy. Controversy has dogged his grandfather Bill and his father Robbie. Now he has his own. With a saturation advertising campaign, he has put sports betting on Australia's gambling map like never before. So successfully, in fact, that he's now the prime focus of a public and political backlash. Sports betting is still just a pimple on the backside of the gambling industry here. Poker machines dominate, followed by horse racing. But the big global players have moved into Australia, and along with the likes of Tom Waterhouse, they want growth in the newest gambling game on the block. And they think a nation with the taste for punting we're notorious for is ripe for the plucking. Where the controversy comes in is with the realisation that the very youngest and most vulnerable of sports fans might be drawn into the culture of gambling like they never have before, with potentially worrying outcomes. An added concern borne out by the latest allegations of match rigging in Indian cricket is that the more money washing around, the greater the temptation for corruption within the various sports. In this report, Marion Wilkinson investigates a high-stakes industry, whether there is such a thing as excessive promotion in this rampant media age, and whether children should be protected from it.
The inquiry is to begin very, very shortly.
I think the first question the stewards will ask in the inquiry today will be to Gai Waterhouse.
It was all played out, of course, on national television, the pair clashing in the mounting yard.
The body language between Gai Waterhouse and John Singleton hasn't improved.
All of the identities involved in this racing scandal.
Yes, that's right. They've both arrived.
Tom, what's your reputation on the line today, Tom? What are you expecting from this morning, Tom?
Do you think this will be resolved in any way at all, Tom? Are you nervous? Or how are you feeling?
Tom Waterhouse is arguably the best-known name in Australian bookmaking today. But this was never part of his million-dollar marketing campaign.
Is the truth going to come out, though, John? Are we going to know really what happened?
That's the idea. Do you think more joyous was no good and the information was passed on to Tom?
You know, Tom. How many times, buddy?
A spectacular showdown between the horse racing media magnate John Singleton and the bookmaker's mother. All forced to appear before a fraught racing stewards inquiry.
Sorry, I couldn't say that. Good morning.
Hi.
How are you feeling?
Are you looking forward to clearing the air today?
Gai Waterhouse, Sydney's celebrated trainer, furious at being accused of leaking inside information to her son Tom on the health of Singleton's horse.
How are you feeling about the inquiry?
Thinking for words? What's going through your mind right now? Are you hoping for a resolution today? Are we going to see an end to this once, an answer perhaps?
Robbie Waterhouse, husband to Gai, father to Tom, forced to relive his own colourful history with the racing stewards.
You haven't seen anything like this for many, many years.
Last week, Tom Waterhouse emerged victorious in the battle with Singleton before the racing stewards.
You'll be looking at defamation now.
But this victory overshadowed a far more serious threat to the ubiquitous bookmaker.
How do I know what NRL punters want? You tell me.
The public anger at the saturation marketing campaign to promote his sports betting business.
Back your team with me at tomwaterhouse.com.
It's fueling a national revolt not only against Tom Waterhouse. The relentless promotion by big gambling companies across almost every professional sport in Australia is sparking calls for urgent political intervention.
And Glenn is up with the very best of them.
Obviously, our most critical concern is around children, that children become so softened to these products that they become a normal part of their experience of being a fan.
I can promise you that if you open up one page or you watch TV for one quarter, you will see betting advertising. And I think it's just gone past the point of no return now, and we need government legislation. We need intervention either at a state level or a federal level.
How hard is that part, that when we have kids, 7 years old, 8 years old, 5 years old, discussing the odds, and we have 10-year-olds lining up to get an autograph from Tom Waterhouse because he's so glamorous, doesn't somebody in Canberra think, don't know if this is working?
That is a very happy Broncos dressing room, and why not? It was a win for the ages. That'll go down in the club's DNA. Tom Waterhouse and Ray Warren joining Phil Gould and myself to talk about the weekend wrap. And
Friday night, March 15, the Brisbane Broncos crushed the St George Illawarra Dragons.
You're sleeping that, don't you?
That same night, the backlash over the bookmakers took off.
Oh, yeah, but I love the Broncos, so I'm
Dropped into Channel 9's expert rugby league panel was bookie Tom Waterhouse giving the odds on upcoming games.
Cowboys and the Storm. Yep. Very hard to separate these two.
Yeah, there's been a stack of money for the Cowboys. They've been 2.02 into $1.91. Storm's drifted. 6-day backup. Travelling.
Talk about the Randwick Guineas. Which,
then up came the odds on the Randwick races.
I think Brassier's going to have the edge on it. Will probably sit second or third. Mum's got it perfectly primed. She thinks he's got a lot of ability.
Rabs, can you see It's a Done Deal sweeping down the outside and beating them all?
Yeah, I can.
Many sports fans were just outraged.
It's a Done Deal would win the race.
There on the 15th of March, we had the commentators, they're all there.
The Derby in particular.
What's Waterhouse doing? So they say to Tom, Tom, what do you think about the 5th at Randwick tomorrow? And it's awful.
I think last week it was Green Moon that let you down in your multi. What's your weekend special?
I know those commentators. They're good guys. They're doing what they've been told to do. But you can see them dying inside because it's bullshit. It is ridiculous on football coverage to pretend to have a conversation, to say, what do you like in the 5th at Randwick?
Look, you can back all the favourites and 4 favourites, and if Manly lets you down, you get your money back. $6.88 there. We're now $7 on the site. Go to tomwaterhouse.com, and if Manly let you down, you get your money back.
For the National Rugby League, this was not just a PR disaster.
It was an unusual race with the scratching.
Channel 9's decision to put the bookie on its sports panel to spruik the betting odds tested the NRL's own guidelines.
Well, it wasn't consistent with our view on how sports betting promotion should take place, and it wasn't consistent with the view of the major professional sports. And Channel 9, to their credit, have responded to both the concerns we've raised and to the concerns the public's raised.
Well, Manly versus the Bulldogs. The money's come big time for Manly. They're the 180 favourites, and there's a few key reasons for it.
Channel 9's response was to take Tom Waterhouse off its sports panel, but leave him on the footy field with his own microphone.
And remember, gamble responsibly.
The concession has done little to quell the anger of sports fans.
The bloke's not a football expert. Don't need to see Tom Waterhouse every single ad break on television. Ridiculous. Thank you very much.
These teams have plenty of points in them, with both their games last year.
But overlooked in the public furor is the big gamble being played out by Tom Waterhouse himself.
With TAB Sportsbet, you're on.
His private company outbid Tabcorp, the leading wagering company in Australia, to get the slot as a major advertiser on Channel 9's NRL broadcasts.
You're on.
I'll give your money back.
It's a contract speculated to be costing Waterhouse $10 million this year.
Gamble responsibly.
His competitors are watching in amazement. Is that a big spend for a private company?
Absolutely. I'm not sure how he could be getting a return on his money at the moment, but as I said, he may have a 5-10-year plan, and good luck to him if he has, but he's really, you need deep pockets to do what he's doing. He's going about it in a way that we didn't go about it, but that's not to suggest that it won't work for him.
More controversially, the NRL also opened negotiations with Waterhouse to become its official gambling sponsor giving him in-ground advertising at the games.
TAB or TAB Sportsbet has been our primary partner over the last 6 years. So we went into a commercial negotiation and we did talk to a number of parties, and towards the end of that negotiation, Tom Waterhouse emerged as the preferred partner.
But in a serious blow to Waterhouse's ambitions, the NRL tells Four Corners those negotiations have now broken down.
We've been negotiating with Tom since the early part of the year, and at our commission meeting on the 19th of April, we reported that we had failed to reach an agreement. So we're simply, at this stage, we're holding. The Commission's in discussions now, assessing the current position, and we'll make a decision on how we move forward in relation to the sports betting space.
Is it fair to say that for this season at least, the negotiations with the NRL and Tom Waterhouse are over?
Yeah, that's correct. We failed to reach agreement around terms with Tom Waterhouse.
The NRL insists the breakdown is not a result of the public backlash, and they're looking for a new betting sponsor before the grand final.
It is possible. We'll be moving forward and considering that position. Of course, there's a range of controls and restrictions that we place on the partners that we have, particularly in the sports betting space, and they're something that has applied in the past and something that would have applied to any partner that we reached terms with in 2013.
Sponsorship from big gambling companies pours millions of dollars into professional sports today. Official betting sponsors buy in-ground advertising at stadiums. Clubs take money for naming rights on jerseys. This is on top of the television broadcasters selling advertising to gambling companies.
If the sugar daddies of the sports betting have got huge cheques that they can write, they will take it and they'll justify it afterwards. The networks, Channel 9, Channel 7, Channel whatever, the commercial networks, they're business organisations, they're business organisms. They will move in a manner and they will put to air what they can get away with to get the big cheques.
Hello. I'd like to tell you about Bet365.com, the world's biggest online sports betting company.
The advertising cheques have got bigger with the arrival of giant global bookmakers in Australia.
They do great odds on a massive choice of sports.
It's created cutthroat competition in the local gambling market. Global players are buying up local betting agencies and tackling Tabcorp head-on for its punters. The numbers being spent on gambling promotion are alarming the public. 122 million last year, and a 20% jump so far this year, thanks in part to local boy Tom Waterhouse joining the competition.
So it's very much about him trying to get share from the existing players. And because he's late into the market, and the market having been deregulated since 2008, he's arriving quite late to start. So I think he has to go harder than anyone's had to go previously to try and address that disadvantage that he has from starting late. That's the consequence of his strategy. Everyone knows who he is, but he is beginning to annoy people.
So this is the trading floor of Sportsbet. On our left here we have the sports traders, and on the right here we have our racing traders.
Cormac Barry is chief executive of Sportsbet in Melbourne, now fully owned by the giant Irish bookmaker Paddy Power. And how important is it for these guys to get the price right?
It's absolutely essential. So all of these guys would have very good mathematical ability.
Its modern trading floor is more like a bank than a bookie's, because Australian gambling is a serious billion-dollar business. These are the guys who are doing your risk analysis for you.
Absolutely. So these guys would monitor the customer's behaviour, the customer's bets. They would look for patterns in those bets.
But it really began to attract the big global players only after restrictions on gambling advertising were lifted by the High Court 5 years ago.
Australia appealed to us because it was a mature gambling market and that the advertising regulations had changed, so we were confident that we could compete for share within that market.
Yeah, the bikini, one of man's greatest inventions. But will it help you bet on your mobile? Cryo blah blah genics.
When it comes to grabbing market share, the ads are aimed straight at young men.
Mobile betting from sportsbet.com.au. The greatest invention since betting.
A lot of these commercials, we see very sexualised images of women, and we would say that that clearly shows that the target market is the 18 to 35-year-old man. Now, in terms of who these actually appeal to, we would say the audience is much younger.
So this is one of the famous bikini series from Sportsbet.
Associate Professor Samantha Thomas has been tracking the growing effect of sports betting advertising on teenagers and young men.
Logos painted on the footpath. They spoke a lot about gambling becoming embedded within their peer groups, that it became part of their match viewing experience. A lot of young men talking to us about the fact that if they didn't gamble, they felt isolated from their peer groups. So those sorts of new patterns, those new cultural norms that are associating gambling with sport are really starting to make us concerned.
We're actually educating a whole generation of Australians. Not only is it all right to bet, but you're a mug if you don't. And I think that is a terrible message for community to be sending out. I'm not opposed to gaming. I'm not opposed to betting at all. But I think adults can make their choices wherever appropriate. But to be actually forcing this promotion down the throats of children from very early ages is self-destructive. And the commentators are going back to what the bets are and how...
Former Victorian Premier and ex-Hawthorn President Jeff Kennett has been accused of attacking sports betting while being part of the poker machine industry. But he's not backing down.
I'm not arguing against gambling. I gamble myself. What I'm arguing against is a community allowing sports betting agencies to advertise so openly and direct their advertising not at you and me, but at young people from the earliest ages possible. Young families go to the football, 3, 4, 5 and 6, they're seeing all these signs. They're seeing their father betting on their phones. That's what I'm so opposed to.
It's Friday night in Melbourne. That's AFL night at Etihad Stadium. And the fans are psyching themselves up for the St Kilda-Collingwood clash.
Go the boys! Go Saints! Woo!
Most are not big punters.
I'll go Saints!
Betting on sport is only around 3% of the gambling market, far below pokies and horse racing.
So who do you reckon's going to win?
Collingwood, of course, mate.
You put a bit of money on it?
No. Nah, mate, we don't risk money. Money's important to us.
But sports betting has been growing at a rapid clip in recent years, and it's easy to see why. Gambling advertising is right in the fan's face.
It gets a bit tiring after a while, especially after our team kicks a goal and you just, every time it comes up with goal and then sport bet underneath it, it gets a little tiring. I mean, a lot of families have lost, dads and parents and, brothers to gambling, and if they go to the footy and they see that, it's just that, nasty reminder.
When you're watching a sporting match, you'll see commentators talk about the odds. You'll see screen crawls. You'll see pop-ups. You'll see logos on jerseys, signs around the hoardings. You'll see commercial break advertising. Then if you go to your mobile phone, you'll get email alerts, text alerts, pop-ups.
Even bigger growth in sports betting is just around the corner. Corporate bookmakers are lobbying hard to take online betting in Australia to new levels of excitement. In the UK, you can bet online on a sports game during the game. It's called betting in play. It's both lucrative for the bookies and popular with the punters. But in Australia, you can only bet in play over the phone or at a TAB outlet. It's banned online.
Australia is one of the only countries in the world which allows sports betting online but doesn't allow betting in play. I think there's very little difference between the two types of bets.
Do you think you'll eventually get that ban lifted in Australia?
I think at some point it'll happen. Betting man, I think it's very difficult in the current political environment. We would be hopeful there will be change during the term of the next government.
Indeed, the global bookies are laying odds the ban will be lifted. And Australia's lucrative online sports betting market will really take off.
With that app on your phone, you can access these products 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, without having to leave your seat. So that means that you can act instantaneously on the messages that are given within a football match about gambling or backing your favourite player.
And there they go, they're off and racing. Unimpeachable, a little bit sluggish here, the barrier number 2.
Well, good luck today, it'll be fantastic. And if you're out there and you want to get a photo in the style stakes.
For many Australians, this is still the place to have a flutter for fun.
Let's get down to the proceedings of the day. We're going to kick off with the best dressed female.
It's Derby Day at Royal Randwick. They're lining up for the Fashion Stakes and the great celebrity race of the Autumn Carnival. Wagering on horse racing still overwhelmingly dominates sports betting. But its growth has been static.
100 on 2, 100 on the 2.
And the old on-course bookmakers are disappearing.
20 on the 2.
The bookmaker as I played and as Rob Waterhouse did at the time, those days have gone at the track. The corporations have taken over really. I was down in Melbourne a few weeks ago for a major meeting and it was really quite sparse in the betting ring. And I think that it's all about price and there's a limit to what the on-course bookmaker can offer. And, he's struggling to compete.
Robbie Waterhouse, Tom's father, still works as a licensed bookie at Randwick, just like his father before him.
I wasn't born to win a major.
But his business interests are intimately connected with his son's rapidly expanding .com juggernaut.
Because I was born a Waterhouse. With 4 generations of betting knowledge in my blood, I was born to bet. Join me, TomWaterhouse.com.
Is also reminiscing, warming up at the 150 Sacred Falls and fast.
The rapid rise of Tom Waterhouse is no surprise to former bookie Dominic Byrne, who once competed with the Waterhouses to be the biggest name in Sydney bookmaking.
Sacred Falls impressively second over.
Today, to be a force in the corporate world, you have to start off with some tens of millions. It doesn't surprise me, though, that it's been a desire of Tom to grow rapidly. He has spent many, many years looking over his grandfather's shoulder, watching everything that his grandfather did. And when he started, his grandfather used to guide Tom with his book. They've always been a very, very dominant force in bookmaking.
But the Waterhouse dynasty has also tested the racing regulators over the years.
Do you expect to receive a stay of the loss of licence and warning off?
That would be up to Judge Gora.
In the 1980s, Robbie Waterhouse and his father, Big Bill Waterhouse, were embroiled in one of the nation's most sensational scandals.
250 metres to go. Fine Cotton still the leader. He's about a neck in front.
It was an audacious ring-in. A winning galloper substituted for a knackered loser called Fine Cotton by a crooked trainer.
Goal line's right on the line. They hit it all. Gee, this is close.
There was no evidence linking the actual ring-in to the Waterhouses. But racing stewards did find they had prior knowledge something was up.
At no time did the AJC or anybody suggest that they arranged the thing or anything like that, but that they, as licensed persons, knew what was going on and attempted to profit from it, which they ought not to have done.
Allow Terce to keep the golden.
John Schreck was the chief steward at the Australian Jockey Club at the time and investigated the Fine Cotton affair.
When you take out a licence, you're expected to answer questions, expected to answer them truthfully, even if you incriminate yourself. And it was decided that, and again by the courts, the courts of the land actually, that Mr Waterhouse had lied under oath during the course of that appeal.
That was Robbie Waterhouse?
Yes, yes.
The AJC ensured Bill Waterhouse and his son were warned off racetracks around the world for well over a decade. A penalty the former chief steward still insists was right.
Most people think that horse racing is crook anyway, which I don't think it is, but most people do. And those sort of things just reinforce that view. And so you've got to stop it. And when you do, if someone does that sort of thing and pop their head up, well, then you have to chop it off.
Last followed by 4 tracks for kids, and Red Leaders is out the back last of all.
Tom's mother, Gay Waterhouse, has always risen above the family's controversies.
Up to the 600 they come, Queenstown the leader.
When she secured her horse trainer's licence, she restored the family to racing royalty.
But you learn in racing the expression "cop it on the chin." If you can't cope with the defeats, you shouldn't be in the sport. So it's a furlong. More joyous.
Now her close relationship with her son is under attack because of the perceived conflict of interest it throws up between a trainer and a bookie.
An all-day Gay Waterhouse money-back special. If your horse runs second to one of Gay's at Randwick this Saturday, I'll give you your money back. Bet with me on your mobile at tomwaterhouse.com.
Ask me in a perfect world, would it be nice to ensure that there was no bookmaker licensed in a family with a trainer or a jockey? Yes. History will say it's happened a few times, not as high profile as this, but is Gay Waterhouse entitled to a trainer's licence? Yes, she is. Is Tom Waterhouse entitled to have a bookmaker's licence? Does he have the necessary skills, the financial backing? Of course he does, you know. Maybe Racing New South Wales will need to sit down and just see whether there's further checks and balances can be put in place. But it'd be a brave person to say we're going to take the licence off him or her simply because we got some unfavourable publicity.
When Gay's son knows last night exactly the result today, the conflict of interest becomes a bit personal.
And they're off now. Rangy Rangdu was the best out.
3 weeks ago, the conflict of interest accusation took off when John Singleton's prized mare, More Joyous, ran second last at Randwick.
All too hard beat Rain of Fear. Ferrenti flashed home to get third. And then in behind them next we had More Joyous, and last in was Smokin' Joey.
So I was going to have 100 grand on her, and then I found when her own son, who's a bookmaker, saying she's got problems I didn't know about.
No, you did that last time, yeah.
Singleton claimed his trainer, Gay Waterhouse, leaked confidential information on the horse's health problems before the race to her bookie son. The claim not only scandalised racing, it put the new face of sports betting under intense national scrutiny.
There's no doubt there's a strident conversation and they are not best of friends at this point.
And there was a fair bump play on as Gay walked away there, a little elbow into Singers.
And Tom Waterhouse, I just have you with us, I have to ask you, I mean, he's also mentioned your name and talked about the fact that you thought that the horse had problems before the race. Did you say that publicly?
I never said that it had problems. I never knew that it had problems. Mum wouldn't have started if it had problems.
But she looks well. She's a beautiful girl.
Channel 9 faced a fresh PR furor over Tom Waterhouse, its big NRL advertiser.
He actually turns and chases. So
it got worse when its star commentator, rugby league legend Andrew Joey Johns, was named as the source for Singleton's allegations.
I know we're a rugby league show, Joey, but in the papers this morning your name is mentioned in this spat that has developed between John Singleton, Gay Waterhouse. Tom Waterhouse names mentioned in there. Can you tell us the story?
Well, I was chatting to Tom Waterhouse just before we went on air. I just simply said, do you like anything on the weekend? What's your thoughts?
Any discussion of the health of More Joyous?
No, there was no discussion of the health at all. I asked his thoughts, and it was off, that's all he said.
Last week, Johns reluctantly appeared at the steward's inquiry into the More Joyous affair, saying he feared for his Channel 9 job because Tom Waterhouse was a major advertiser.
Were you surprised at how much they gave you a grilling?
Johns agreed. Tom Waterhouse told him he didn't like More Joyous before the race.
What are you hoping from Andrew Johns today? The truth, mate. The truth?
Johns also agreed he told Singleton about their exchange, but he strongly denied Tom Waterhouse told him about the horse's health problems. More stunning was John's revelation he'd discussed More Joyous with his mate, the brothel owner Eddie Hayson.
Are you glad it's all over today?
Hayson told the hearings he had a source on the health of More Joyous connected to the Waterhouse stable and decided not to bet on her.
Central to the steward's inquiries is this man, Eddie Hayson, now the nation's largest punter.
A legendary punter, Hayson has been called to front a steward's inquiry before.
Eddie Hayson was a very big player as a punter at the time. He was betting in hundreds of thousands of dollars. It's well known that he has a certain type of club, and it became known to me that some of our jockeys were frequenting there, and it was a meeting place. Now, I didn't think that was a very healthy look for racing. I didn't think it was very healthy for integrity, and I said it.
Hayson's brothel, Stiletto, is one of the grandest in Sydney. It infamously hosted footballers and jockeys, while Hayson was a racehorse owner and betting big on racing and sport back in 2006. Hayson was never charged by the stewards.
Oh, look, I probably walk a fine line, but I know where the line is, and I'm certainly not going to break the law.
Last year, Tom Waterhouse took a caveat over the brothel after Hayson ran up more than $3 million in gambling debts to the bookmaker. But Hayson told the steward's inquiry last week this debt is settled and he had no grudge against the Waterhouse family. Tom Waterhouse was cleared by the steward's inquiry last week, although warned against using his mother to promote his business.
I don't think anyone looking at the evidence we had could have made a finding that Tom Waterhouse was privy or passed on privileged information.
What's going on here? Are you guys famous?
No.
But the sensational hearings could not have come at a worse time for Waterhouse and sports betting. Public concerns over the industry are boiling over.
The more that sport and gambling is all mixed together, the greater likelihood that you're going to have a cancer, a corruption of the soul of sport, that you're going to have guys, when there's $5,000 riding on who scores first, tell you, all right, I'll score, you score, you do the penalty, I'll kick the... You beauty. I mean, it's got to happen. It has got to happen.
He is getting his chance late in 2010.
Betting scandals are still rare in Australian professional sport.
On the attack, Bowen to dummy half.
But in 2010, Canterbury Bulldogs player Ryan Tandy landed one right in the lap of the National Rugby League.
Ugly-looking tackle, and the penalty comes right in front of the post.
A big betting plunge on an exotic or micro bet for the first penalty goal in a match between the Bulldogs and Cowboys rang alarm bells.
And Ryan Tandy involved in two.
The NRL turned to the chief steward of New South Wales Racing for help.
We were able to get CCTV footage of the cash bets, and of course we were able to track right around Australia and even in New Zealand betting, unusual betting on the first goal penalty. It was very cleverly done in that it was placed in multiple bets and hidden away from someone just looking at, win-loss records.
As Ryan Tandy arrived for his first court appearance since he was charged with lying to the New South Wales Crime Commission, police were yet to reveal the NRL betting scandal had deepened.
Ryan Tandy was found guilty of match fixing, fined and placed on a good behaviour bond. The revelations during the case, including Tandy's own gambling problems, prompted all the codes to beef up their integrity units. Are you confident that the Ryan Tandy case is an isolated case?
We're doing everything we can. As I said, we've put in a range of measures, not just our integrity unit, but the codes of conduct that exist, the education programs that we've got running across the board. So those measures are all aimed to eliminate that risk, and we're doing our very best to do that, and we're confident we're being successful.
The big corporate bookmakers argue they work closely with the codes to track any suspicious betting plunges. Well-regulated online sports betting is the best frontline defence against match fixing, says Sportsbet's CEO.
It's much easier to track activity on the internet because it's account-based. We know who our customers are. We have integrity agreements with the sporting bodies. We report any suspicious activity to those sporting bodies. The main risk to integrity is through anonymous cash betting or offshore betting. So the examples we've seen in Australia are anonymous cash betting in the TAB with the Ryan Tandy case. We've seen SP bookmakers operating on the waterfront, and we've seen offshore bookmakers trying to influence matches. There's absolutely no incident to date of an online bookmaker being involved in an integrity issue.
But some regulators fear the risk of corruption is rising as corporate bookmakers offer more exotic bets on scores and penalties to attract the punters.
The real concern is that if there's infiltration by criminal elements where people are given favours or are trapped because of debt, whether it's gambling or other, to involve themselves in manipulation of the exotics, I think that is something we've got to be very, very alive to. I think there needs to be a reining in of those bet types. I've said that publicly time and time again, and because that's encouragement to corruption.
G'day everybody, welcome to the Run Home Big Show coming your way, and let's get straight to the big man, David Schwartz. G'day Elks.
Hello Marco.
Former AFL star David Schwartz is today a much-loved, entertaining sports jock.
Well, Doom was good at it.
But during his famous career, he was consumed by desperate gambling addiction.
Let's get some tough calls.
Sport is sexy. Elite sport is really sexy. I found myself getting swept up. My judge of character was terrible. I trusted everybody.
He's copped criticism for working with the pokie industry to promote responsible gambling.
And look, I'm a massive, massive fan of Jack Riots.
But he's deadly serious in warning the sports betting industry that vulnerable players and their managers are being targeted by match fixers.
They should have pulled him in the line a long time ago.
I would be very surprised if we didn't have most of the codes here in Australia being infiltrated as we speak by someone or some bodies or organisations.
Trying to match fix.
Yep. If I had a young man, if my son was going into the game now, I'd be making sure that he had the most competent manager that I could find, someone that is respected, someone that is trusted. I'd be ensuring that my son kept his friends very close and didn't allow people into that inner circle until they were absolutely proven trustworthy.
I contend to you, in fact, it's more dangerous because at least watching a kids program, you don't have Big Bird talking about the odds of getting 2 + 2 right.
The public backlash over the promotion of sports betting is now mobilising politicians on all sides.
Mr Waterhouse was invited to attend. Regrettably, he wasn't available, but I do...
A joint parliamentary committee is expected to call for new curbs on sports betting advertising next month.
My point being, if you're a young person...
Several bills, including one from the Greens, are pushing to ban gambling advertising in sports games broadcast during children's viewing hours, even on Saturday and Sunday afternoons.
Pertaining to kids shows.
We've got this crazy loophole that says you're not allowed to advertise to young kids during children's viewing times if it's a gambling product, and yet we allow this constant bombardment of betting ads during sports broadcasts during children's viewing times. So it makes no sense, and we've got to close that loophole.
If there was compelling evidence that that advertising was increasing harm to society and increasing the likelihood of children going on to develop a problem, absolutely I'd support that. In the absence of any concrete evidence of that basis, I would not support that, as I believe we have a legitimate right to advertise what is a legal product in Australia that a huge amount of people enjoy.
I've spoken to thousands and thousands of kids and hundreds of school teachers. And from year 7 onwards, there are kids betting and betting regularly.
How do they do it?
Well, how do kids get into nightclubs underage? How do kids drink before they're 18? You know, they're clever. You know, the internet is an amazing place.
What the minister needs to do is he needs to show some courage. He's got to stand up to the industry, and he's got to legislate. He could do that simply. He would have the support of the Parliament, I'm sure. He'd have the overwhelming support of the community, who are fed up with this entanglement of gambling and sport.
2 years ago, Communications Minister Stephen Conroy promised to rein in the promotion of sports betting.
You won't need to have Richie Benaud telling you and urging you that here's the odds on who's going to get out next or who's going to bowl the next no ball and telling you to go online and start betting.
TAB Sportsbet have it the other way around.
But his latest voluntary agreement with big TV broadcasters will simply put limits on the promotion of live betting odds around matches. It won't ban gambling ads when kids are watching.
The Dragons started the game as $1.48 favourite.
The reason I did that is that when I asked them...
Some, even in his own party, believe it's not enough.
The pot that was just bubbling away is now boiling over, and people are calling on community leaders to do something about the incessant promotion of sports gambling. People might say it's always been...
At a recent meeting on the New South Wales South Coast, Labor backbencher Stephen Jones got a clear message about problem gambling in his electorate.
Now, in that group is a 20-year-old that has a gambling problem. So much so that he bets on everything and is now in debt and has to take out a loan to pay his debts.
The backbencher is now drawing up his own bill to ban sports betting advertising in kids' TV hours.
We've seen the promotion of sports betting go from almost nothing to what seems to be ubiquitous throughout the broadcast of a game and at the game itself. It's happened that quickly. I think we can make some changes just as quickly, and I think most Australians would thank us for it. What I would say is that the longer we leave it, the more ingrained it becomes, the more it becomes a part of the economics of the sport itself, and it'll be a lot harder to unravel.
As football final season approaches, without political intervention, advertising by the big bookmakers aimed at punters is expected to ramp up.
Yeah, I put $25 on Pendlebury to kick the first goal.
For those who enjoy gambling, it will mean better prices and more excitement. But for many fans, it will mean explaining to their kids the game they love is worth a lot more than a punt.
You know, I don't want my children growing up only knowing odds. I want my children growing up knowing that the young superstar players that are out there at the moment are more important than trying to win $5 off a bloke who kicks the first goal.
The Joint Parliamentary Select Committee on Gambling Reform will be delivering its report next month, smack in the middle of an election build-up and the likelihood of a new government. Not necessarily a climate conducive to good sense or good policy making. On the steward's inquiry into the more joyous affair, Gay Waterhouse has pleaded not guilty to 2 charges relating to informing stewards of the health and treatment of the mayor. The trainer will reappear before the inquiry next Monday. On Four Corners next week, we enter a mysterious new world of espionage and reveal a secret threat to Australia's security. Until then, good night. If you have any problems related to gambling, you can ring the hotline numbers currently on the screen for advice or assistance.